We have a major whistleblower. The video she did is 20 minutes long. It's on Infowars.com with Jakari Jackson Friday night. She's just recently gone public, given some speeches, and when I watch her, I'm an expert on geoengineering and chemtrailing from studying it for 15, 16 years. You know, the actual documents, the engineers, so I know she knows what she's talking about. And she breaks it all down on her YouTube channel. She spent 9 years on active duty in the U.S. Air Force Environmental Engineering. That's what they call it. By the way, this is all quasi-public. The details are classified. And then when you talk about it, they go, you're crazy. Working in industrial hygiene and environmental protection. She was, and then it goes through all the things that she's fighting and exposing. And she joins us now, sugardecodedsanity.com is her website, sugardecoded.com. And she joins us now. I appreciate her coming on. Just give us the skinny of it. Because of time constraints, how you woke up, what you saw in the Air Force, what's going on with the environmental, it's biological too, engineering. And because, I mean, you're one of the few insiders. There's been a couple others. One of them got shut down and then won't talk to anybody, won't even know where he's at. But tell us what you witnessed. Thank you, Kristen Meghan, for coming on.
Well, thanks for having me, Alex. Like I've said before, actually, it was your documentary, Terror Storm. My brother showed it to me back in '06. I was in the military, completely ignorant to what was really going on and what we were doing. That video woke me up. I kind of went through a stage of what's going on, questioned what I was doing in the military. And that video ignited me going into researching a lot of things you were talking about. And in doing a lot of the research, I came across truther sites, heard about chemtrails engineering, thought it was just a crazy conspiracy, and then the light bulb goes off, hey, if this is going to go on and people are blaming the Air Force, I'm in a good position to kind of look into this. So kind of living a secret life while I was in the military, I started to look and try to debunk this. It was almost offensive to my lifestyle. In an attempt to debunk it, like I've said before in my speech, part of the process was to follow what's called an Air Force Form 3952. It's the approval and authorization of hazardous materials on base. So I would tie, like, you know, from benzene, toluene, things like that were coming on base, even metal sheets to come on base, we would tie it to a building in a process. So just to make a long story short, I started seeing the same constituents that were blamed for chemtrails. And I went, wow, you know, this stuff is coming on base and it's not labeled. It's normally tied to a building, but you got barium, strontium, aluminum, different radioactive materials and tiny particulates coming on base, which is usually the same hazards that we were trying to debate for all the DOD and Air Force personnel. So I did my own soil sampling, rain sampling, grid sampling, and what I was coming back with was government reportable, and the EPA would not do anything about it.
I hear a radio on in the background. Can you do me a favor and turn that down just so I want to be able to hear you clearly?
Yeah. Sorry, hold on just a second. Can you turn off that audio out there, please?
I know everybody wants to listen, but it kind of makes it hard. Okay, now expanding on this, I mean, they admit the geoengineering. They don't call it chemtrails, but under the Department of Energy and Air Force, the billions a year are public. We just don't have the details. Specifically, for laymen out there, explain the chemicals they're using at the Air Force and then what you discovered.
Well, again, what I had seen was materials coming on base, and these were completely didn't label which company they were coming from. That was a huge red flag for me. So at the time, you know, fearing reprisal, I didn't ask the questions, but I thought, wow, you know, this is a huge indicator to what people are saying. So again, I lived a mile behind the flight line, and I did my own soil and rain sampling, and those same constituents were showing in my soil. And so people know I am credentialed to understand how to do this type of sampling. You go and you get your county's background information, and you know what's already naturally occurring in your soil for your state. And when you have these parameters of these constituents and compounds that I sampled for, it should not be in the soil. This was a very scary, scary time for me. It took me until I left the federal service to actually start talking about it. And I just hope that more people will come forward that are still in my job, or anyone in my line of work in the federal government as a whole will come forward and talk about this.
Sure, and again, this shows the compartmentalization they use. Until you knew not to trust the system, even though you were over environmental procedures there in your area of the base, you didn't know what to look for. Talk about the different chemicals and things that were being brought on and the amounts of it that was being brought on?
Well, it was aluminum oxide, barium, and strontium. And the thing about strontium, in the form of paint, it's a strontium chromate, similar to chromium, chrome 6, if you've ever heard of that. So they were coming in like tonnage. I mean, not as solid materials, but as aerosols. And it's coded by if it's a solid, if it's a liquid, if it's an aerosol.
Exactly what the chemtrail researchers exposed 15, 16 years ago, yeah. Which now, all over the U.S., the soil's going way up to where plants can't even grow.
Exactly. I mean, the evidence is here on the ground, yes.
Unbelievable. Keep going.
And one thing that just blew my mind was I started to kind of talk about this amongst some of my coworkers, and they thought I was crazy. But I'm always known as being against the fringe. So just throughout my career, this was around 2007, 2008. Even when I moved to Robins Air Force Base in Georgia, I didn't see those same materials on system. But the same things were coming back in my soil and rain samples. And now that I'm in Chicago, I'm getting the same things. And actually, when I worked at the VA after leaving the Air Force, I met an EPA compliance inspector who was actually chastised for bringing this up. He's a full believer in chemtrails. He's seen some things that he is going to talk about when he retires from the EPA. I mean, they kind of took a 26-year EPA compliance officer who's a GS-13 high ranking and put him out in the field to kind of shut him up. So you have people within the EPA who are saying, hey, we know about this, and it's a shut up and color type ordeal.
I've had them on from the EPA and recently retired, and they talk about in areas of the country, because they have, as you know, the soil samples going back 100 years. They go, my God, in 5 years, the aluminum dioxide levels, in, one person I interviewed in Washington State had gone up more than 10 times what it was. I mean, they are just, and you see it everywhere. The trees are dying, the plants, farm growth belts are, I mean, this is, it's almost like aliens that want to kill the earth or something. I mean, I'm not saying they are. It's so diabolical.
What's insane too, Alex, is the fact that if you're familiar with anytime there's removal of soil remediation, construction, you cannot even haul off soil waste until it's been tested due to different CFRs. You have to test it for benzene and oil and biologicals. So when you really start to see how many people can profit off of this whole program, it's disturbing. And I actually, now that I'm done with it, I can talk about it. I've been doing a study pretending to be some student, and I've contacted a lot of land disposal sites here to get copies of their trends, and this stuff is everywhere.
Unbelievable. Stay there and break that news when we get back. 9-year veteran of the Air Force, over environmental engineering, Kristen Meghan. She's going to break down this new study she's been doing. This is incredible. Levels of this are exploding everywhere. Her report's coming out soon. We'll get her on for a full hour. Kristen Meghan, Air Force whistleblower, sugardecoded.com. I'm Alex Jones of Infowars.com. By the way, there's 2 films that we carry discounted at InfoWarsStore.com. We can punch them up. It's Why in the World Are They Spraying and What in the World Are They Spraying? Both very, very important films. You can either get them individually or discounted together. And again, I have that punched up on my computer. You guys can just punch it up right there. Absolutely. There it is. InfoWarsStore.com. People can go there into the DVD special area and find those. And it gets into what's happening worldwide. And here's the deal. We found the patents adding aluminum dioxide, barium salts, and the strontium and things to the jet fuel through the big manufacturers, and then it aerosolizes it in the engines and puts it out. Perfect compartmentalization. You have special Air Force teams. I saw one thing recently, $5 billion for the Department of Energy in this. There is a huge program. I think I'll ask Joel Scalzon when he comes up in the next hour what he thinks of this. But Kristen Meghan, you're saying, trained in this in the Air Force in bioenvironmental engineering, working in industrial hygiene, environmental protection, that you've now been going around and getting samples all over the country. And what are your findings, and when is this report coming out?
I'm hoping to have it out by the end of July. I've had to be really careful in getting this information, but I presented myself as a student who was learning about new remediation techniques by different things as cool-off, new programs for companies. So I wanted to look at different contaminants that were common in industry. So I've been able to get a lot of information that's public record from different sites all around the country. I've been doing this for about the last 6-7 months. And this was actually just started out as me personally. I have a lot of disinformation trolls that attack me, and I'm just trying to give as much evidence as I can for people to understand.
Yeah, I wouldn't even respond to critics.
Yeah,
I mean, that's what they always do. It's just meant to change the subject.
Yeah, but all this information is to help those people who are on the edge to say, hey, this is really happening. Look at your areas. So I hope to have that finished by the end of July because it's very technical. I'm trying to get it to a non-technical level so everyone can understand what I found and the trends across this country. And it's not even across the country. I haven't been able to get records in other countries, but I have kind of liaisons in other countries, other biologists and chemists actually, who are fully awake to this. And one thing I wanted to bring up for what we discussed earlier of how big this program is. I don't know if you've heard of this new TV series on the Weather Channel called Hacking the Planet, but it's a new show. Just aired a couple months ago. They had an episode about weather modification. And in this show, they talked about how they did weather weaponry for Vietnam. They openly admitted that there are contractors that are doing, quote, cloud seeding.
Bill Gates runs a giant company, quote, that can control hurricanes. I had Ben Livingston, the father of weather weapons, on. He's like 90-something now. He broke it with me because it had just been declassified. He was the father of weather weapons. First got to fly into typhoons and hurricanes back in the 40s. And he was the guy that led squadrons in Vietnam. And he admitted all this. And they could control hurricanes in the 60s. Stanford Research Institute certified. And what do you think they're doing here? Because they're not just doing weather modification. What do you think this larger program is? And what did your findings, I mean, obviously from what I've seen, it's going up. Is that what your findings show, this stuff's going up?
It is definitely going up. And like you said, I'm very familiar with the work. I think it all started out as weather weaponry. And I think over time, different corporations and government entities realized how they can all profit. We're all familiar with the UN Agenda 21. And one thing that, you know, all these people that work in the health profession and OSHA will never talk about the #1 hazard that is hidden, and that's called autotoxicity. And it's certain constituents in pharmaceuticals and in these materials used in geoengineering, to where when you are inhaling or ingesting certain constituents, it actually poisons the inner ear. So you're hearing these crazy stories of children. You know, when I was in school, I didn't have
No, stay there. You know, you're onto it. It's also a binary weapon system. Absolutely. And then they're doing it mainly to America. Finishing up here, we're going to go on for a full hour when her report comes out in July. Kristen Meghan, Air Force whistleblower who was there watching them shipping in tons of barium salts, aluminum dioxide in the aerosolized form, which is what they're using for weather mod. And then the White House science czar admits they're doing it, but it's classified. And Bill Gates brags, and they have conferences where they admit it. And then they have newscasts going, crazy people say the planes are spraying something. Those are ice crystals. Yes, I remember when a kid watching the ice crystals disappear. On a really cold day, they might stay there 5 minutes. We're talking about hours and creating whole plaques. So in the 5 minutes we've got left here, 3-4 minutes, Meghan, Kristen Meghan, what other tidbits do you want to impart to people about what's really going on here and the whole health effects of this?
Well, the biggest issue, again, what I discussed before the break, was the autotoxicity and all of the health hazards that are associated with these constituents through it's inhalation hazard, it's an ingestion within our food and water. I'm sure people are familiar with how Monsanto is resistant to a lot of constituents used in geoengineering. It's about believing. And this is my biggest thing. You always say go out and research it yourself. You can air sample, soil sample for all of these constituents, all the panel for under $50. You can look up the lab in your area, do it for yourself. Find out what the background is in your area, and you can see
highly poisonous levels of this are everywhere, and everybody in the EPA and state levels are told shut up.
You're exactly right. And as a federal employee, I was told to shut up. I didn't get responses from the EPA in my region, and I was a GS-12 working for the VA, and I had the credentials for them to realize I wasn't some crazy conspiracy theorist. I have the credentials and the interactions and the networking to say this isn't right.
And what's happening is because we're exposing them, they're now trying to segue with shows and movies, and Time Magazine for Kids last year said, oh, look, it's sunscreen for the planet, and said, we're spraying this, it's added to the fuel, they're admitting it to kids. And then here's Bill Gates. Bill Gates, climate scientist lobbying for large-scale geoengineering. Other wealthy individuals have also funded a series of reports and tests for us. Isn't that sweet? To save the climate. Oh, so see, now because we're exposing it, they're now trying to segue. Super creepy. Bill Gates, who says there's too many of us, I'm spraying aluminum on you that sterilizes you and causes neurological disorders because I love you, children.
You're exactly right. And the rise in the neurological and respiratory illnesses are documented, especially if you follow a lot of the OSHA reports related to those in industry. I mean, I know personal medical for the general public you can't find, but in the workforce you can. And that's why a lot of people in general industry and construction are saying, okay, people are claiming these injury and illnesses not related to our hazard. These are people that work around soil remediation, construction workers. I mean, this stuff is all documented. You just have to connect the dots.
Well, if Hitler would have taken groups he wanted to kill, you know, if he would have taken over Russia to some area of Siberia, put them there, and then flew over and sprayed them at this, they would have never even known. I mean, again, it's a soft kill weapon.
You're exactly right. And one thing here, I live in the west suburbs of Chicago. We just had a notice from the police department letting us know that they were spraying BTK to kill gypsy moths, and that there's nothing wrong with BTK, which the biology of BTK, if inhaled, has potential effects as the same protein buildup as anthrax. But you're going to say it's safe. So they'll alert us about spraying a contaminant on us, a biological contaminant /
Well, that's just to get you used to it. Yeah, they killed people in the New York subway in '68. Details remain classified. But, I mean, you know, shooting black men up with syphilis, that's loving. Don't be an extremist. Folks, drink your fluoride, take your shots, enjoy the increased cancer rates. The government loves you. Okay? Kristen Meghan, we'll talk to you again soon. We salute your courage. God bless you.